everyone, this is Nonfiction Narratives, and I'm Gwen. And joining me today is my coworker, John Fowler.
Hi, everybody. Very glad to be here today. So excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you too.
Thank you for having me, Gwen. Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun because we get to talk about one of the favorite things that we love to talk about, which is mythology and folklore. Like, this is
all the things. World mythology, world folklore. Just there's such a wonderful variety of stories just across the globe. And, I know we've had a bunch of fun conversations on the desk.
Oh yeah, so
we've selected a couple of things today just because world. I mean, that's so broad.
Yeah, we can't cover every topic in the world about mythology and folklore, but we could cover 3 of them.
Right.
And you want to get started off with
sure.
Egypt?
So
hold that book up so everybody can see it.
We've got the Chronicles of Ancient Egypt by Jonathan D. And this is something here at the library. You're able to check it out if you like. I highly recommend it. It's been really helpful for me because I've got passing familiarity with the Egyptian folklore mythology, but it's never been one of the ones that I've been like super well versed in. But this did such a wonderful job of like breaking things down and making it really clear. There's kind of like a clear chronology that it follows.
Okay.
And it was super helpful for me just getting more familiarized with the characters and the concepts of play.
Okay, so you talk about the chronology and how the timeline of it.
Yes.
So did their mythology like change over time?
Egypt is really interesting.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I found most interesting, particularly about this bit of lore. It's that the Egyptian mythology, it's kind of dynastic. It's like you've got, it passes from father to son. You get this dynastic sense of time moving forward. So Ra is kind of like the ultimate deity. But even then, he was born from like this primordial god, from the water and the swamp and the weeds. And so Ra came forth. He's the sun. He created sons and brothers and daughters, and they're called the Company of Heliopolis collectively. So honestly, when it kind of reminded me of Game of Thrones when I was reading this, because they're like the Starks almost,
that's amazing.
And within like the family, you have like different dynamics between the siblings. There's like all these competing political agendas. And that's kind of what really grabbed me because eventually Rob steps back. Another thing that I didn't quite realize is that in their mythology, the gods actually take time to rule as pharaohs on earth. They're mortals. So their godhood
so they're like born as humans, as the pharaohs? Am I understanding that correctly?
So their godhood is constant, but it seems like the ones who rule, so we go Ra to Osiris to Horus, they kind of have like assumed mortality.
Okay.
And then it kind of passes away when they decide to step back.
Okay.
Well, Osiris didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. In Ra and Horus's case, and definitely in Osiris's case, he was murdered. FYI, spoiler alert, guys. But yes, there is a mortality factor there that isn't really present with other deities that I've come across in world mythology.
Okay.
So that was really interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So who's your favorite character?
So, okay, that's tough. If I had to pick somebody though, I would probably go with Thoth. Thoth he's kind of like the god of the moon and like the god of wisdom, and he's also a scribe. He's always writing and jotting things down.
Oh, yeah. That
resonates with me personally.
Scribes, man.
Yes.
We work in the library. Like the writer guy.
I will say this, I do not have a secret bird head like Thoth. Not a thing. But there's a lot of other points of commonality that I appreciate.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of glad you don't have a giant bird head. That'd be a little bit better.
It's an interesting party trick, though. If you ever need an icebreaker, and you've got like a big animal head that you can just kind of pop out. But no, I don't have one.
Good to know. Good to know. So, do you have a favorite story about it?
So, again, one of the things that just really struck me as super interesting is the mortality that comes with them.
Yeah.
And so the Eye of Ra was probably the story that most interested me, because right off the bat, Ra is a mortal man. He's human and he ages, but he rules for an extended length of time. He's still a god, but he's aging.
Mhm.
So after about 300 years, like, Ra starts to really deteriorate. His hearing goes, his vision goes. He starts having signs of what you could categorize as dementia, and he's still king, he's still pharaoh, but he's not making the best decisions anymore, and it causes problems amongst the gods and amongst the people. And eventually he kind of like catches on that people are laughing at him, they're making fun of him, and it's hard for him, and he's trying to figure out what to do, how to turn it around. And he goes and talks to his father, the primordial like swamp deity.
Okay.
And as you do,
Yeah.
And once during the course of this conversation, over the course of it, Ra starts getting angry, and he takes steps to avenge himself against the human populace. And he plucks out one of his eyes and uses some kind of like bizarre magical ritual to create a whole new deity called Sekhmet, who is this awesome, vengeful warrior goddess with a lion's head. And it's incredible. And he just turns her loose against the human populace. And she's very good at what she does, and she enjoys it. Every night she comes back and reports to Ra. That being said, things start going awry a little bit. And,
I mean,
ultimately,
vengeful warrior goddesses, they kind of bring the mood down a little bit.
they do.
They're cool, but they bring the mood down.
After a while, it gets a little old. Ra himself kind of was, after a point, was like, that might be enough blood. We might be good. And then Sekhmet, she says, you got soft, old man. What's the deal here? Like, no, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. You can't tell me what to do, basically, more or less.
So she acts like a cat.
She acts like a cat, exactly. Full lion head on display.
Mm-hmm.
So shenanigans, he manages to like lull her to sleep with blood wine. Gets her super, super drunk on blood wine, so she'll pass out, thinking it's actual blood, because she does that. She consumes the blood of her enemies. So it's about as heavy metal a goddess as you're likely to find.
That's hardcore.
Then he removes that vengeful aspect from her.
Okay.
And there's versions of the story where this creates Hathor or Bast. Bast is the more well-known cat goddess in Egyptian lore, just depending on which version you're looking at. But that kind of like mellows out Sekhmet after that, and she's still a goddess of vengeance, but she's a little bit more mellow and not quite so bloodthirsty.
Okay.
It was quite a read.
That's kind of wild.
Yes, I highly recommend it, and there's so much more. I mean, there's a lot to dig into here.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yes, by all means.
Yeah.
I'm big fan. Can't recommend it enough.
Okay.
So now, Gwen, you were specializing in India, right?
Yes. I read Folktales from India, a selection of oral tales from 22 languages, edited and introduced by A.K. Ramanujan. I seriously doubt I'm pronouncing that right, but it is available here at the Spartanburg County Public Libraries. And it was really fun to read because I didn't know much about it yet. I still don't, honestly, but you kind of get this little sense of that other culture.
Right.
And some of their goddesses and gods show up and make appearances. And they're not quite as heavy metal, but they are sometimes very tricked. They can be tricked, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's this one guy, he gives this prophecy. He's a Brahmin, and he gives a prophecy that his daughter will become a prostitute by a god. Well, after a while, he starts thinking, well, how's that going to work? I don't want this for my kid.
Sounds pretty rough.
Yeah, that's kind of a harsh thing to do, but the god has said it, so it will happen. So what he does is he tricks her. He says, don't sleep with anyone, and that'll ruin the prophecy, but this prophecy still has to be fulfilled.
Right.
Or else the god gets kind of mad. So the god's like, well, what happens now? How am I supposed to fix this? And the guy's like, well, if you really want it, you can buy her for the night. So then she has the god for a lover.
Okay.
So that's that resolves that very neatly.
Nice.
Mhm.
Sometimes things just work out.
It does. I mean, of all the possible worlds, that was probably the best thing to have done.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. There are some tropes here that Western audiences would recognize.
Mhm.
Like there's always the handsome prince who marries the poor girl. And there's
Yes.
always the wicked stepmother, or the mother-in-law, the wicked mother-in-law. They do not get a good rep in this book.
Very classic fairy tale type stuff.
Yeah.
Very, very Disney.
Yes. And despite what I've just told you, a lot of the stories are very feminine, very feminist. There are some elements, obviously, that modern readers are going to find jarring, and we're going to be like, that's not politically correct.
Right.
But there are women who are frequently shown to be wise, who are frequently shown to be heroic, and who are always have agency. They always act to resolve their own problems. One really good story is about Volpalucci, and she's a very poor girl in this village out in the middle of nowhere, and she's kidnapped by a vicious robber, and he takes her back to his house, and he leaves her, and he goes to plan the marriage feast. So she escapes, she returns home, and she avoids the pursuing robber by hiding in a different house every night. Eventually she runs out of friends, they kick her out of the house, and she has to stay in her own house and face the robber. He and his friends come and kidnap her again. She waits until they're out of the house by pretending to be asleep, and then she attacks them and decapitates them. And she fights them, and her would-be kidnapper scrambles up a tree. She dares him to come down and face her. And when he doesn't, she gathers up a bunch of sticks and firewood, sets that tree on fire, and he jumps down and breaks his neck.
Wow.
I know.
Oh, okay.
It gets better. It gets better. With him dead, she carries off his ill-gotten gains, his spoils, his riches. She goes back home, and the last line of the story is how now she is so rich she can marry anybody she wants.
That's so wonderful. Yes, good for her.
Yes, and there's a bunch of stories like that where the princess or the poor girl uses her wits, uses her brain power and her strength to save herself. It's like, yeah.
That is really refreshing.
It is. I enjoyed that story.
So very much in fairy tales, you do see that the woman waiting for Prince Charming.
Yeah, up in the tower.
Yes.
That trope.
She ran a guy up a tree.
Yeah.
And smoked him out of it. If that's not a subversion, I don't know what is.
I know, right? I want a Hollywood movie about this, or Bollywood, either or.
I would buy a ticket for that as well.
Yes. There's a lot of witty characters in this. There's one that's really my favorite. Let me see. It's a short one, so I'll read it out loud.
By all means.
Thank you. So the title is Make It Shorter, and it stars Akbar and Birbal. Akbar was a great Mughal emperor, and he had a Hindu Raja at his court who played the jester, the counselor, the wise man fool, depending on the story. And his name was Birbal. So one day, Akbar drew a line with his royal hand on the floor of the open court and commanded, "Make this line shorter, but don't by any means erase any part of it." And everybody else is just stumped and staring at each other. They don't know what to do. And finally, Raja Birbal turns up, and he takes a stick, and he draws a longer line next to the first one. He doesn't touch the first one. And everybody at court goes, "That's true, the first line is now shorter." Just a little bit of wit that I just appreciate so much.
So these two are recurring figures in stories.
Yeah, there's a couple of stories that feature them. They seem to be a little shorter than usual in some of the other stories, but they're pretty witty, and it usually is just delightful. Nobody ends up dead.
Birbal seems like he could fit into that kind of trickster archetype,
Yeah.
which I always love characters like that.
Oh yeah. He and Loki would get along.
Loki, you said.
Loki.
Interesting that you bring up Loki.
I do bring up Loki, and I actually meant to bring my Viking horned helmet, but I forgot it at home. I'm sorry, everyone.
Well, I don't have one either, which is a terrible mistake on my part. I should get a Viking.
We should. We'll put that on the to-do list.
Indeed.
But right now we have Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology. We both read this one.
Yes.
Yes.
just right off the bat, gotta say, Neil Gaiman, fantastic writer, loved so much of his stuff. When I found out he was originally going to do his spin on like the Norse mythology and kind of do it from start to finish, I was so excited. And when we finally got the book, it did not disappoint.
It did not. No, it's so obviously having so much fun with it.
Yes.
Like from start to finish, like you can tell that he loves the material and that he's really into it and he's researched this. It's like, oh, dude, so much fun to read.
That's right. Something that he's just so good at is imbuing any story with a lot of character and humor. And that really comes through here.
Yes.
It doesn't read as much, like ye old fairy tales.
Yeah, when you're reading some of the old just straight retellings,
Yes.
you don't get quite that humor. But like with Neil Gaiman, like there was one where Loki cut off Sif's hair. He got drunk and he just cut off her beautiful golden hair, right?
I thought it'd be funny.
Yeah. I personally don't cut off my friend's hair when I'm drunk, but you can do
It's kind of mean.
Yes, yeah. But Thor comes to find him, and Loki's like, oh, I don't know, dude. Your wife's hair is gone. My bad.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I cut down to the root. It'll never grow back.
Exactly. Yeah. And Thor's like, well, it is what it is. And also, I can probably take me about an hour to break every bone in your body. But after a couple of days of doing it, I can get it down to 15 minutes. And at that point, Loki starts to cooperate and look for a solution.
Wait a minute, he says.
Hey, just a second, we find a solution.
And characteristic Loki fashion, he does.
He goes to the dwarves.
Yes, the dwarves will be able to spin Sif new hair out of gold. Special golden hair that will bond with her scalp, grow like regular hair, and be more lustrous and beautiful than her original hair was.
So Sif turns out okay with this.
She does. I mean, it works out for her. And in the bargain, the gods get several other treasures and gifts.
They get Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. And what's the other one they got?
They got Odin's spear. They got a ring called Dropnir, which you wear on your arm, and then a certain increment of time, is it every night it creates 9 duplicates, 9 golden duplicates?
I think you're right.
So you're constantly generating wealth.
Yeah, it's a good investment.
Frey was given a boat, the second biggest boat ever. Can fold up into a nice little shape and fit in his pocket so he can carry it and then pull it back out and sail. Fantastic stuff. And it feels like we're missing one.
Let me see.
The boar. That's right. Frey was gifted a golden boar called Gullinbursti that pulled his chariot and was made from gold and a boar skin, and it would actually glow in the dark. It was definitely, not the kind of gift you can find at Walmart or something like that. No, this
was dwarf magic.
Bespoke, artisanally crafted golden boar.
Hipster stuff.
Yeah, exactly. During the course of this, of course, Loki had several side bets that he made because Loki just never knows when to quit.
He does not. He is so extra.
He bet his head that the group that forged Thor's hammer would not make better gifts than the sons of Ivaldi, but Broken Eitri proved him wrong, and they were going to take off Loki's head. Loki, however, made the point, can you do that without taking any of my neck? Because my neck wasn't part of the bargain. They couldn't find a way around that. So instead, they just sewed Loki's lips shut for a little while.
Yeah.
So just keep him from talking.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta take what wins you can get.
Yeah, let's just keep him quiet for a while.
Loki. Just stop talking for a minute.
And it probably kept him out of trouble for a while. So really, I guess it's all's well that ends well for everybody. So, Gwen, do you have a favorite story?
Oh, I like the story of Odin One-Eye. And when he goes to the Well of Mimir, which is the Well of Wisdom, and Mimir's his uncle, and he's like, I don't care about you. I've never met you. And Odin's like, well, I just want to drink from your well. I want that wisdom. And Mimir's like, well, oh, no. And Odin's like, well, I'll pay you for it. And the cost is one of Odin's eyes. And the second that Odin hears that, he just takes a knife and he digs out his eye. Just like that. Like, it's like, hey, man, no hesitation.
Yeah. just instantly.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that I appreciate about Odin is everybody knows that you can't trust Loki. Loki is obviously duplicitous in a very loud, showy way.
And yet, for some reason, they never throw him out.
They never do.
They just keep tolerating.
Until that last time.
Yeah. Too little, too late. But,
right. But they really put up with a lot, more than you think that they should.
Yeah.
Obviously showy dangerous. Odin is a quiet kind of dangerous. He's always plotting, always scheming, and you never quite know what's going on behind that one eye that he has after that.
Well, the one that he left behind in the well, he can still see everything and nothing all at the same time. So who knows what's going on? He's just not telling anybody.
And he has the ravens that spy for him too. I love that.
Spying ravens.
He's like a more malicious Gandalf with pet birds.
It's a beautiful way to put it.
to bring in some of my other nerdy things, like, and I think Gandalf was actually inspired by Odin, so you know it's a fair comparison.
It is a fair comparison.
Tolkien was a nerd too, as it turns out.
Yeah, he spoke Norse.
Did he?
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was Cretan Elvish and all that. I mean, okay, this makes sense. I buy that.
So, did you have a favorite story?
Oh man. So I picked my top three. Of course, the one where we forged Mjolnir was good, but I tried to pick some other ones as well because that's an obvious one. So the Mead of Poets is one that I thought was super interesting. So Kvasir, the god of knowledge, is murdered, and he is his body is harvested and turned into this wine that these two elves drink, and it causes them to stop beautiful poetry. And the poetry changes hands a couple times over the course of the story, but eventually, through trickery, Odin is able to recover it for the gods of Asgard. And they have all the poetry for themselves. But it's such a neat idea that, you know, anyone who's like creatively talented, whether it's musically, when it comes to poetry, prose writing, art, that inspiration comes from this poetry.
That was a cool idea.
Yes. And then I won't say here, but the story also reveals the source of bad poetry and bad artistic endeavors. And if you
know who to blame.
That's right. If you want to find out where that comes from, you'll have to read the story because it's quite a reveal. So I love that one. I love monsters. I love creature features. The whole nine, always have. So the Children of Loki has always been a story that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, this is such an interesting story because they were monstrous children. You had the giant serpent, Jormungand.
That'll work for me.
Okay. You had Hel, the goddess Hel, and you had the wolf.
Yes, Fenrir.
Fenrir.
Sometimes called Fenris.
Fenris. One of the two.
Choose your letter.
Yeah.
Whichever you want to go with.
Yeah. So you have this, and they're really like outwardly monstrous children of Loki.
Yes.
But they really weren't that monstrous, like personality-wise. I have
No.
some sympathy for these people.
Over the course of this story, you can actually make the case that it's the gods that made them that way.
Yeah. I mean, Hel was a little girl when they banished her to the underworld.
Yes, innocent
That's not-
child.
Yeah, that's not really something good people do to tiny children.
No, and you see it with Fenris Wolf in particular.
Yeah.
He befriended one of the gods, Tyr, and he wouldn't have done anything except the gods finally didn't trust him, so they bound him. And I don't know how much our viewers may or may not know, but Norse mythology is a cycle, and everything always comes back around. So choices that get made in that story have dire consequences later on.
Oh yeah.
And that's always so cool to see play out.
It does. They all flow very well together. You kind of see, you know, this story and this character means that this story and this character has to happen now.
Yes. And Gaiman does such a wonderful job of setting that up. And the last story that I also really enjoy is Thor's journey to the land of giants. So He's out on the road with Loki. They pick up a young human sidekick named Thialfi. Shenanigans ensue.
All the shenanigans.
Everyone's character's on full display. Thor is grumpy and short-tempered. Loki's always making mischief. Thialfi's kind of the wide-eyed young sidekick. It's like, I want to be helpful. I want to do the good things. I can run really fast. I can prove myself. You know, you got all that on display. And the land of giants is a very magical and mysterious place, and things aren't always quite what they appear to be there. And
yeah, that's the story where you sort of see some of the limitations put on Thor and Loki and that other kid.
yes, exactly. And you get like a real sense of their power as gods, and even Thialfi is immortal. Is capable of some really impressive feats, even if they might not even think that they are doing that impressively at the time.
Yeah, when the reveal happens, when you see what's really going on, it's like, oh wow, wowzers.
Yes.
Something good.
They say a good magician never reveals their secrets, but you will find out a secret or two by the end of that story.
That's a good story.
Very, very good.
So once again, that was
Chronicles of Ancient Egypt by Jonathan D.
Folktales from India, a selection of oral tales from 22 languages, edited and introduced by A.K. Ramanujan. And Norse Mythology by
Neil Gaiman.
And you can find them all at Spartanburg County Public Library. Thank you for joining me, John.
Happy to be here.
It's a ton of fun.
Yes, most definitely.